Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of On Point. With me is my able and capable engineer, Mr. Jimmy Eastman. How you doing, Jimmy?
Hey, Mr. Gayman, it's a blessing to be on the show one more with you, so we can discuss issues that affect our beloved country, Liberia. We hope that
Thank you.
what we will discuss here and bring light
Mhm.
to will help inform the decisions they make on ground. So, thank you.
Great. Great. I'm hearing a little background noise. I think you need to adjust your set a little bit. There's a lot of grind. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I know today is a very busy day. The NBA playoffs are on. The Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks. As you can see, I'm wearing my Boston Brewing hat. Everybody in South Florida, we are Miami Heat fans. We are waiting for Boston Celtics. We are rooting for the Boston Celtics. We want Boston in Miami Beach. We want you guys here. So that's with that said, let's get to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to talk about current events in Liberia as usual, things that affects our country, our neighborhood, and our livelihood. Today we are going to be talking about things that have some historical context. Later on, our other panelists will join us. We are going to be looking at three main things today. We are hoping that you will be part of this. Call in, make your comment, and be a very, very participatory. Let us make this a participatory show today where everybody has an input. Off the top, let's look at this week or last week. Today's Sunday is a new week, but last week we saw representatives from the opposition presenting something that is called, or they call petition. And they said they have 300,000 signatures from Liberia. We want to know how were they gathered, whether they are legitimate, or are those registered voters, were those names actually from Liberia or from the diaspora. We're going to be discussing that. We're also going to be discussing the militancy in Lofa County. Let's look at the history of militancy in Liberia. If the CDC government, the first government to actually militarize or weaponize its partisanship to the point where Liberia are now, everywhere you go, people are dressed in the military regalia, their caps, their boots, their uniform, and they are crying or saying battle cry. So we want to look at the CDC militants in Lofa County, the most recent one. I think Jimmy Eastman is a student of history. We are going to delve into that to see whether this is a new phenomenon in Liberia or because of social media and the information age, we are now being exposed to these kinds of military actions in our country. Jimmy, let's look at this new phenomena. Uh, well, there are two new phenomena. We are talking about petition. We know politicians and people that have interest group love this thing called petition. And with petition comes signatures. And in the United States, where you and I live, there are methodology to signature petition gathering. We do it outside events like sporting events, schools, supermarkets. Everywhere you go in the United States, that is where you go to Walmart or you go to any of these stores, you will find people outside with their clipboard asking you to sign on the line. And they tell you, listen, we are for anti-abortion or pro-choice. Sign here to support our cause. So this is why these folks presented to the United States Congress. They are saying 300,000 signatures of Liberians, and they want more sanctions on Liberia. They need something done about what's going on in Liberia. You tell me, Mr. Eastman, what is going on here?
Very good. Let's go back to why these signatures were gathered. Since the end of our Civil War that lasted 15 years, and claimed the lives of over 250,000 Liberians. We got together and composed a truth reconciliation forum, and there were certain agreements or certain understanding taken from that meeting. And the understanding taken from that meeting were that some war combatants were not allowed to participate in elections, and that certain people who committed crimes against humanity should be brought to justice and what have you. But unlike what they did in Rwanda, we have yet to bring anybody to book for their actions during the war. We know that pregnant women were killed, innocent people lost their lives, all sorts of atrocities were testified to this Truth and Reconciliation Committee, but of yet nothing has been done. So a lot of people still believe that until people are held responsible for their actions during the Civil War, the civil crisis, Liberia will not be completely healed. This part of the healing has to come with people paying for their crimes. And we have talked about this before, that there has to be accountability for one's actions. So there have been people going around and asking for signatures so that the world powers that concern themselves with acts like this will finance a tribunal or some court to bring these people to book. So over the years, they have been gathering signatures, but they hadn't reached a certain number. Now, recently we hear that the 300,000 signatures that I guess was a quota they had to reach, we hear that they have reached this. Now, whether the authentication of these signatures, I'm not sure of them, but I know this has been a long, ongoing process to get Liberians to sign on this. And finally, now we hear that it's been completed, and this document has been turned over to the U.S. Congress for action.
Let me put you on the spot here. I have to admit that I am anti-war and economic crime court. I made it clear from the very beginning. Why? Because I was there from the formation of this war, and I know the major players, and I know these players will never get involved. They will never be scrutinized. They will never be brought to book. So I know very well that this is a complete fiasco for the little guys and for politicians. I'll give you an example. I was in a home with my uncle, the late Tom Wowiyu, when this ACDL were formed. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Dr. Emma Sawyer, Tom Wowiyu, the late Harry Greaves, Dr. Levi Zanga. We are talking about the late J. Rudolph Grimes. These are the core folks that formed the ACDL. These are the folks who were the brain behind the orchestration of this war and the mayhem that happened in Liberia. I was there, and I know these folks, and I know very well that this economic and war crime court that was supposed to bring the greatest, those who bear the greater responsibility to book, will not consider either one of these folks. In fact, most of them have died. Ellen is here, Dr. Sawyer has died, Tom Wowiyu has died, Harry Greaves have died. I think J. Rudolph Graham, most of the folks that were involved, that actually orchestrated, we can say Charles Taylor have died because he would never get out of jail. So bringing the regular folks like the child soldiers and these folks to some court wouldn't make sense to me, because the actual perpetrators of the war are untouchable. So what we are seeing here, those signatures, we are talking about how authentic are those signatures? Are those signatures from the Republic of Liberia or from the diaspora? How were those signatures gathered? Are they warranted, needed, or justified? What is the end goal of these sanctions? Who benefits and who suffers from these sanctions? So tell me, from what you see, who are the stakeholders, who are the hands behind this, and what is the actual target? Who benefits from this?
I want to agree with you in certain aspects. The time we should have implemented this was right after the civil crisis. As more time has elapsed, a lot of evidence is vanishing. It becomes more and more difficult to persecute the people who committed these crimes. It is now it's been 15 years. It makes it quite difficult to do it. Some would argue, like you, that it's a cause now. It's a lost cause because the people have died, the witnesses have moved on, and now it doesn't bear the same weight it should have bared a long time ago. But what I keep hearing, Mr. Gayman, is that they concerned that some people are still about, that they know that are known to have committed crimes, and they're still allowed to hold top positions and stuff like that. So I agree with you when you said it looks like its intent is to target a certain people, because most of the people are not around. Many people are not around anymore. But are we wrong for bringing one? If it's just one or two people we can bring to justice, is it wrong? Is it not a good idea? Does it not help heal? That's the question.
Well, then who does this benefit? Let's go back to 2004, 2003, at the end of the war. The agreement was that everybody that took part in the war basically had to partake in the spoils of war. If you were in Liberia when I was there, because I went right after the war, we had the different ministries, the different agencies divided among warlords. Certain warlords had the Ministry of Defense, some had the Ministry of Commerce. So the country was divided. Basically, the people that committed these crimes were rewarded, because according to Jack Klein in the UN and Kofi Annan and their group, was that this was the only means of bringing this thing to an end. Give Charles Taylor the presidency, whatever that was. When that failed, when the war came about, they decided, well, we are going to appease them. So everybody who were a member of the warlord, you had your own department. You had 18 months. We had an interim government. After that, the country was open to election. And everybody who took part in this war that made huge sum of money during the interim government, they were allowed to participate in the government, in the electoral process. So they used their blood money, and those that were traumatized, they bought themselves right into the government. Now they are in the lower houses, they are in the lower house, they are in the upper house, they're in even in the Supreme Court we got warlords. So how it is possible the judiciary, our Liberian judiciary have warlords, our executive have warlords, our legislative body have more warlords. These are the folks that are supposed to make the law. So how in the world are we, besides politics? This is why most of us say this is only politics, because this thing has to be done by the politicians. Just as we are saying, repeal the benefits, the salaries of the legislature. For that to happen is like going back to them and say, can you please cut your own pay? It is law, it was codified. You cannot do that. So how do you see, for those of us who are saying, we had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, they came up with their recommendation. Their recommendation was that Ellen should be barred from politics for 30 years. She should not have anything, and the Supreme Court knocked that down, that it was unconstitutional. So here we are back to square one. So how does a country like Liberia, that have had all of these folks into it, how do we have a war and economic crime court?
Yeah, just what you say, it is daunting, because if anything, we should have done it right away. But some would argue, Mr. Gayman, that if we can bring one person to book, one or two persons to book, but let's bring them to book. Maybe we can't bring everybody, but we should have somebody accountable so that they won't repeat the same next time. You know, we're a small country. We're very tied. People are tied together closely. The vice president has said that we're too close we're too connected. We've seen President Weah. One time he was an advocate, but since coming to power, he's preoccupied with other more important things. But for some, this is very important, you know, and it is difficult to tell them, you know, nothing we can do. I honestly believe that people should be called to book, but there are so many things going on in our country right now. We'll have to prioritize, but accountability is very important for the future of Liberia.
We are hoping this is a very touchy issue. We know this is political because those signatures that were gathered, first of all, cannot be authenticated. Like you said, we don't know where they came from. We know in this country you can buy signatures. When you can have a petition and hire folks to go anywhere and put a name on it. I would have loved to see that those names are names of Liberians, registered voters that can be verified that these people are Liberian. We know that this War and Economic Crime Court is a diaspora Liberian thing. It is not the Liberian thing on the ground. If you talk to 10 people in Liberia, 8 out of the 10 folks are going to say, we have moved on, we are healing, and we do not want to open no more wounds. We need to move ahead. We have, on the other hand, you have the politicians, those with interest that want to weaponize this for the 2023 elections. They are pushing this economic war and economic crime court. And to me and to many folks who knows that it is a non-starter, because first of all, before Jack Klein left, when I spoke with him, they told me that the war and economic crime court in Sierra Leone cost close between 300 to 400 million US dollars during those days. Okay, now Liberia has a budget of $550 million. Okay, are you telling me that our entire budget for the fiscal year should be spent to bring or to try people in absentia, to try people who have died, to find 2 or 3 guys butt naked and few guys from Grand G there, maybe Nimba, Lofa, and grab them and put them in jail and say, well, it's $1 billion well spent. Would that be your better way of spending your taxpayers' money? And what does that do when folks say you are actually you're witch hunting?
You know, I argue the same thing, that our limited resources prohibits us from doing everything. And the ones who advocated, they told me that there are some organizations that will sponsor it for you. For instance, the Sierra Leone tribunals or whatever they had there were sponsored by international organizations, so it wouldn't be on Liberia's dime. That's what they argued. But again, what I'm considering is, if it was difficult to do then, how about now? It is going to be more challenging. But if we can bring at least one or two people to account for their atrocities, I'm sure that the U.S. government and any other big nation who had their citizens killed or attacked unjustly will not forget and will want to bring anybody to book who was responsible. So what I look at, we may not do it on a large scale like we should have done a long time ago, but there may be one or two individuals that they may be able to go after. That's how I see it.
Well, then let's do this. Give me an example. Liberia is an independent country that has a judicial system, have a Supreme Court. And our Constitution says that the Liberian judicial system, our Supreme Court actually our Supreme system is the final arbiter of law in the country. So why are we using our Liberian legal system? And we are saying, many of the folks on the other side are saying that it should be a quasi-independent.
Well, you have that answer. We are too involved. Many of the people, like you say, who were involved are part of the court system. Many of the people who are involved are part of the legislature system. So we are too involved. So the only way it will be conducted with some degree of autonomy and fairness is if it's a complete third party who had no involvement, no ties to Liberia, or no ties to people who committed these crimes. They conduct it because they will be more objective than any Liberian who were related to anybody who was part of this. That's the justification they are giving.
No, but that wouldn't stand either, because last week, I think one of your gadgets, maybe I'm hearing some feedback. There are, as you can see, in Finland about 2 weeks ago, there were other folks that were charged with economic war crimes in Liberia.
Yeah.
And after, I think he was charged with 19 counts. And after they came to Liberia, collected the evidence, spoke to witnesses and everything, they found out that the case could not stand the test of any judicial system. And this gentleman was clear of every count, on all counts. In fact, there are speculations that some witnesses were coached, that evidence were bogus, some were trumped up. And these things that happen, like you say, as the case goes on and people get older, memories fade and things become murky. So that makes this particular case, to me, almost impossible. Secondly, it's a constitutional issue. We cannot have another legal system while our judicial system is in place. So, for instance, if Jimmy Eastman, if you find me guilty, where do I file an appeal?
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted to go to the Supreme Court, I am a citizen of Liberia. The Liberian Supreme Court is the final arbiter of justice. If somebody finds me guilty in a lower court, I have the right to go to the Supreme Court. If you find me guilty by the War and Economic Crime Court, you will be denying me my constitutional right to an appeal.
Exactly. It gets kind of complicated. What is gonna happen? There may be one or two people brought to book, but because of the time that has lapsed, I think we've lost vital time to implement anything across the board. There are too many complications at this point, So what I think we should examine, Mr. Gayman, why? Why did we not take swift action like Rwanda, like Sierra Leone? Why did we allow people we knew were very active in these atrocities, or at least they were the men that reported to them were responsible to them? Why did we? What does that tell us about ourselves? What kind of people are we that we didn't have the spine, the nerve, the tenacity to bring these people to justice and tell them, say, no, you did this and you will not. What does that not tell a story about ourselves? This quote may never come into being, but it does reveal something about Liberians as a whole.
Well, one of the things that we need to talk about finally before we move on to the next subject is those who are weaponizing the economic war and crime court. What is in it for them? What is the politics behind this? Because for the 12 years that Ellen was there, we didn't see this. And most of those now who are pushing the economic war crime court, most of whom were also part of the former Ellen government, and they benefited from the spoils of war. Why now? Who are these and what's the reason? Because I know the names that we are hearing, they were hired, like the Island Whites and all of these folks were folks that were hired by the opposition, and they are pushing this. What is in it for them?
Mm-hmm. It is. I can see how some opposition leaders would, try to gaslight these old wounds for their own political benefit. But there are some families who are not involved in politics who still feel the hurt and pain of their lost ones, and they see the culprits going around with impunity. Those are the issues we hope that can be addressed. I don't think it's fair, but the question is, why has it taken us so long?
Well, one of the things before we move on, first of all, how dubious and political and illegitimate this cause is. First, when the name were being listed, those who bear the greatest responsibility of the war, as you can see, there were names that you and I are quite familiar with that were at the forefront of the war. Those names were deleted. And according to Ms. Martha Washington and other folks that were on there, there were more names that were supposed to be on our list. But by the time the list left their conference room, when it got to Jerome Verdier, the chairperson drew the final amendment. Well, not the final, to do the presentation. There were several names that were removed from that list based on personal interest, based on economics, based on family ties, and some of those names were struck. And those names that remain, we were wondering, for instance, from the beginning, those that raised the big bucks, that brought the money, Ellen admitted to only $10,000 initially, but we know the war cost millions and millions of dollars to perfect. While they were raising money, all of these folks, are we now willing and ready to say Ellen holds or bears a strong responsibility of this war and economic crime, and she should be arrested and imprisoned? Are we ready to do this, or we are going for only Prince Johnson and the butt naked guy, those two guys, and say, well, these two, we at least will set an example? Wouldn't that be considered witch hunt?
I think that's a very fair question. Are we really ready to go after all of them? Because that has always been the problem. We knew these people and we saw them, but it was always lack of will, chutzpah, to say we are not going to let you sit and rule because we know you partook in this thing. And today, even times, to correct you, there were times that even elements of the CDC government, they too were championing the cause, but it's never has happened. And now it doesn't look like, it looks like that lion has lost all its teeth. But like I said, the pain some families feel, we know we have to find a way to help them get over it, and for them to see these murderers, these people who kill their family, walking around with impunity. It's difficult, and that's who I my heart goes out for. But we lack the ability, the willpower to go after these guys, and I don't see anything changing in the near future.
Aloysius Banks, I think, just made a comment that when we were in opposition to CDC, we also weaponized the war and economic crime to our advantage. So according to him, and few of those on that side believe that basically this is what's going on. It is political in nature. In reality, it would never happen. First of all, we compare ourselves to the Sierra Leone court. The Sierra Leone court that happened never actually happened in Sierra Leone, as you can tell. Actually, most of the stuff happened in Liberia, where Charles Taylor was convicted, not for crime in Liberia, but crime in Sierra Leone. So this tells you the duplicity and the difficulties of what we are talking about. Charles Taylor committed all of the atrocities in Liberia, but he was never, while he was in custody in the war crime court, he was never convicted of one crime in Liberia. Instead, it were crimes committed in Sierra Leone. So here we are. What makes Liberia so untouchable to the point where we have to always go to the international community for help? We wash our dirty clothes. The representative from Nima County has appealed to the United States, a congressman from Liberian Congress appealing to another congressman in the United States to help him remove Prince Johnson from Liberia. A few weeks ago, we saw the Great Unity Party, that the party that just left power, marching to all the embassies in Liberia asking for help. And then here we are, our most intelligent group, the so-called diaspora Liberian, the Liberian intelligentsia, are saying we cannot solve our own problem. We want the United States to come and help us by taking away privileges, denying visa, knowing that most of those that were standing over there are all U.S. citizens, Liberian with U.S. passports, and saying we should take away some of the sanctions, or put sanctions, take away some of our privileges, and put names of food without the cover. Now they don't know. You cannot convict anybody without a corresponding evidence. Signatures are not evidence. To have somebody convicted of a crime, you have to give the person due diligence. You can march to the White House, to the Supreme Court, to the U.S. Congress, all you want. If you don't have evidence, you have nothing. And as it stands, until we have the evidence, it's like we are saying in Liberia, Mr. Eastman, anybody can just get up and say Jimmy Eastman is corrupt. Jimmy Eastman stole. Jimmy Eastman building a big house. Without a corresponding evidence that you stole something, it is mere allegations and bluff.
Yes. There are many strengths and weaknesses of our criminal system. And all falls upon our own convictions and principles. And that is the fact that we have to ask someone else to intervene. It shows that there's something missing amongst ourselves. And our problems will continue until we find what this thing is missing. Well, Mr. Gayman, I like to submit what has been missing. We have not established principles to live by. If we establish principles to say we will live by this, anybody who committed crime will not and we live by that. And when they want to come up to talk about Constitution, say no. This has nothing to do with the Constitution. This has something to do with the war. And we don't violently protest, but we take the matters in our own hand. But if we're going to compromise on principles, then the whole system will be weak. So, we can talk about this all day, but it comes down to Liberians believing in certain principles and sticking by them to the very end and not waiting for somebody else to do it.
Well, this brings me to my last point here before we go. Liberians themselves, and I know illiteracy has been basically a political war in Liberia. The old guard from 1816, 1820, 1847 had no interest in education. The more illiterate they are, they're easier to manage, easier to manipulate. So that had been basically a weapon. It was weaponized during the old era. And you saw that when the coup took place. You heard, well, when you were a child, when we were children, our parents sang glory to President Tubman. Like the Bassa people, you say, Tubman, no matter what, you would die in here, you would die in the sea. We would never allow anybody to touch you. Or they sang that song. When Doe killed Talbot, you heard the same people, our people, gullible people saying, native woman born soldier, somebody else born rogue, and all that stuff, and we cheered. And then when Charles Taylor were coming, the people from the other side kept saying, Chucky is coming, Chucky, Chucky, Chucky. And they were cheering and raising money for Chucky to come avenge. And then when finally he got to where he needed to be, people began to sing again. You killed my mom, you killed my pa, I will vote for you. And they voted him in. When the war came on, when they were getting rid of Charles Taylor, you saw they had the different factions. We had the Lofa Defense Force, and this defense force, government within government, feeds them. And that went on, and we cheered them. When Ellen came, everybody knew that Ellen was part of the whole cabal that brought this war and financed it. We were saying, Mama now come. We sang again. We cheered her on. She came and they destroyed the country economically. They did everything. While ECOMO was there, we had 12,000, almost 15,000 troops. Nobody said, guys, this is the right time for us to try these folks while we have extra help. They let that slide. Now, here we are now. We are singing another song. So you are right, Liberians do not have any principle. Because of our lack of education, the literacy rate is so low that we are gullible, and few folks from the diaspora have always capitalized on that, and this is what's happening. And this cuts across the board. Whomever is in power or seeking power weaponizes that ignorance to do what they want to do, and this is where we are. But from what I understand, it would be almost impossible unless it's a charade, which is a political thing. This is going to go by. Before we go on to the next one here, we've been hearing different things in Liberia. You were at the University of Liberia. When you were there, when we were in Buchanan, I was a follower of Dusty Wolokoli and these guys at the University of Liberia. They were the militants. They would soup with protests, and they would be disrespectful to the president. They would do all kinds of stuff. And you knew that because you grew up in that era. We all grew up. You may not have been a part of it, but we followed these guys, and we knew who they were. And we followed the Amos Sawyers of the world because basically he was the guy who was fermenting. He was the political science professor everybody looked up to, and all of this. So now we are seeing now CDC with their berets, and now in Lofa County, we are seeing it has come to a full-fledged where they are neatly dressed with their CDC written on their back and their berets, and they go and they call themselves the militants. Mr. Jimmy Eastman, let's delve into the history of militancy in Liberia when it comes to politics.
Very good. I like that question, Mr. Gayman. Well, let's first think about why why is militancy employed? The reason why people or nations, groups, everybody employ militancy, because militancy shows strength. It shows power. When you see the people walking like soldiers, it shows strength. So one of the reasons militancy is used is to show power, to show strength. But there are different levels of militancy. When we saw during the days of soup, like the days you were talking about, when Tulay Party, it was with this this dominance in our political system, when we wanted to see a more pluralistic, a multi-democracy in our country. The idea was to get together and form a show of force, show consolidation against such rule. Okay, so that is where militancy took naissance, where it was born in Liberia, when people getting together to show strong resistance. But today, what we see with militancy, we see CDC employing militancy again, is to show strength and solidarity for a united purpose. Where we see militancy go wrong is when it exacts violence against those who oppose or who are in disagreement with it. That we see violence occurring, we see different things happening when it comes to the public, and there is some resistance to it. Today we see in Lofa, we see elements of militants showing again solidarity and a show of force for whoever they represent. But here's the thing: if we really want to improve Liberia, if we really want to improve our country, we can only do it through helping each other, community work together. So if militants are ready to go and shout and slogans, they need to also be ready to participate in community work. So the fact that they're there in Lofa, are they helping clean the streets? Are they helping build toilets? That is where we need the militancy. But just for political gain, for one politician, that's not going to improve. That never improves. We need militancy where our community would benefit from it. And this is when politicians use militancy, it's just for their own gain.
Well,
he's very smart about that.
Mr. Eastman, you and I have been around this table a couple of times. Politics is interest, isn't it so? During our childhood, William V. Todman has his own militant. They call it the PRO. I don't know if you remember that word, PRO. PRO was basically a paramilitary folks, okay? He called them public relation officers that made family members, every household. Mothers were spying on their children, husband was spying on their wives, wife was spying on their husband, brother was spying on cousins, all over the villages. Everybody, like in our village, my father got $20 a month. He was a PRO officer. Anybody who talked bad thing about Todman had to be reported to Jesse Gould, who was the district commissioner on the compound. And Jesse Gould would send the red berets those were like constables, they call them in Great Britain. The constables would come to the home and tie these guys up and all the troublemakers. These were the tactics that were employed by the old order to create fear, intimidation, and control. And here we have it now that we have the exposure, we have the internet, we have social media. Our education system is getting advanced. Everybody can read and write. Everybody is a journalist. Now we are seeing the power of militancy. At the University of Liberia, when those guys were there 2 years ago, you could tell everywhere on the university campus, everybody wore their military fatigue, their military shirts, their military boots on the university campus. We are talking about the suit guys you just talked about. So what we are talking about here is Liberia and our history in militancy from the ruling party. Now that we have access to wealth, access to power, every group. The last time we saw Darrell Dillon, I think at his football stadium, he was stopped from going into the VIP section because he was downstairs. He came and he attacked the SSS guys and said, if you don't let me in, when I gave order to my guys, nobody would be able to stand in their way. So he has his own brigade, the Darrell Dillon Brigade, the military guys who, when he said go, they're ready to go. Same thing with Uri in Nimba County. When the election was going on, he released his attack dogs and they went over there and beat people. People got hurt. So the militancy in Liberia has a steep history. And it goes all the way back. If you were from the Mount Bagley area, they will have told you that they will release prisoners midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. They had a group called You Too Late. The You Too Late came from the True Party. And if Jimmy Eastman was considered a bad guy and you were arrested, the biggest crime for all political prisoners in Liberia at the time was vagrancy. You were arrested for vagrancy, you would be put in jail in Mount Bagley somewhere, and then 1 o'clock in the morning they release you, and on your way home you disappear. There's something called You Too Late. It's a paramilitary group from the True Party that was attached to the Masons and the UBF and the All Fellows. So we have a steep history in militancy in Liberia, and if we are going to deal with this, we have to come up with a better solution than weaponizing it on our side.
You know, I don't know about all those stories you give. I do know that Tubman employed his PRO. Those were his listening devices so that he could know everything everybody's doing. They were informants, and they were telling. And a lot of times they carried lies. They carry lies. So that was the PRO. I didn't see them in any form of attack group or the military gear or anything like that. But they were informants, and information is power. So that's how I saw the PRO. Anybody who became part of the PRO supported the government. So that's what he used to control all dissent in Liberia, because everybody was afraid. They knew if you talk something dissenting, the PRO will report it. So that's how it was used. But what we're looking at today, when we talk about militancy, it reminds me of the Civil War, where we saw several warring factions. This is what happens. Everybody has their militant group. Everybody's showing a full source of force. Next thing you know, you clash, you fight war, nobody gains. So as much as I am for solidarity, as much as I am for showing your support, but it should not come to the point of violence. We don't want to see somebody, if they disagree with you, we don't want you to see you beating innocent civilians. We don't want to see you, if somebody refuses to go with what you're saying of their innocent bystanders, we don't want to see you hurting them. A lot of people said the part of our war and listen to me on this one, Mr. Gayman, part of the war, why innocent people were hurt, because imagine the rebels came to revolt against the government. Why were they killing innocent people in the villages? Why were they hurting those people when the people had nothing to do with them? The reason why these atrocities took place, the villages were burned, because these militants, they were afraid that if since you did not join them, you could later come against them and come behind them. So the best way, either you join them or they have to deal with you, because you could come up later on tomorrow and be an enemy to them. So I'm trying to say that this militancy, we need to convert it to doing things in a community to better the community. Because if it's only just for enforcing your principles and your beliefs, no. If you want us to believe in your principles and beliefs, show us what you can do to the community. Clean the streets, build toilets, build schools. That is how we will believe in your theories, what you against, but not forcing people. This militancy, what we've seen, they want to use force. We don't need force. You want to convince me about your ideas? Show me what you can do for the community. Then I'll be convinced. We should convert this militancy to actual work and productivity in Liberia.
Well, Mr. Eastman, recently you saw at the Temple of Justice militancy at the highest level when the Unity Party folks and their militants met Mr. Cummings at the Justice Ministry, where he was giving a press release or a press conference or talking to the press. And you could see the Unity Party people behind him, chasing him, calling him roll, to the point where they were encroaching on his public space. Same thing when Joseph Boyka came in to testify, the ANC folks came with their militants to the point where they are now suspending the case. According to our sources there, people are claiming that the atmosphere is too hostile for the old man to even walk through to go and testify. So this is what we are talking about. Whenever your man is on the line, you have your own group. In fact, when Unity Party were when Joseph Boyka was about to go testify on Spoon TV, Spoon made the announcement. The old man came the first time and he had no supporter, and I think the AG had to escort him inside. So the Unity Party had asking their partisans to show up tomorrow when Joseph Boyka shows up, and the whole place people converge on to the point where they had to reschedule the hearing. So if you look in our archive, I think Focus on Liberia has it. Joseph Boyka and the Lofa Defense Force, he has a photograph with them sitting. They are there, and he's standing on top of them with his green regalia shirt and his scarf. So all of these folks have come up to be militant in some form or another. Even in the churches, they have people now doing these battle cries, and they are dancing around, and they're carrying our leaders should know that all of these young men, they may be in their early 20s, middle 20s, they were all child soldiers a few years ago. So all it takes is like a time bomb. All it takes is to let the few. When you tell these kids, come and join the militants, come and join, it becomes fashionable. It's in vogue, and now everybody now part of some group and wearing this. Like you say, somebody started with the PRO, which was basically an informant group that were there to suppress, to collect information, and in other places intimidate. Same concept here, they have taken it to another level. This time now, they are not only using audio, now we're using visual, we are using all the senses. You're not only going to see me calling and shouting battle cries, but I'm going to dress like it, I'm going to look like it, and I'm going to come as a team. So this is what we are saying. And you are saying the remedy to that is to channel that energy positively in doing good for the general public. But who are
Thank
those?
you.
Who are those that are running these militant groups?
Exactly. You see, if these people are truly interested in our communities, for instance, I like to take Lofa. If they're truly interested in building up Kolahun or any all those other surrounding little villages, if they really have our interest in our Lofa villages, they will help us build those communities. Will they, instead of sending a battle cry, they will send work brigades, like Pajibo said. Work brigades, help us build it, help us work, help us clean the place. That's how you show us you love us. So all we can do, Mr. Gayman, our message is for Liberian people. Say, watch, if these groups are coming, if they come and help you build your town, if they come and help you plant your crops, if they come and help you clean the street, then you know that's you they care about. But if they're not coming to help you build your community, they don't really care about you. They don't care about you. But battle cry doesn't put food on our table. You know, it doesn't help. It doesn't educate our. Are they coming to help educate our children? Are they opening up classrooms for our children? So we Liberians need to open up our eyes so we can see the truth. We can see the real purpose of these things. Are they there to help us or not? And we have to open up our eyes as Liberians to know. Okay, so then we'll not have 15 years after war, nobody can be brought to book.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a few minutes of break, maybe a few seconds for our station to identify itself. After Focus on Liberia identifies itself, we are going to go to reading some of your comments and then respond to them. Then we'll come back for our final segment. Focus on Liberia.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it looks like our technicians are busy there. So let's go to our reading our comments. Can we get some of the comments on? Are you seeing the comments in your section, Mr. Jimmy Eastman?
Okay. Let's see. Yeah. How about I'm beginning to see some stuff.
Okay. You read some, I'll read some.
Okay.
Let me start with Aloysius Banks. Aloysius Banks said another misinterpreted story. I don't know what he means when he says mixed. We got Miata Stella Herring. Illiteracy breeds ignorance, and that was clear in that chant. Infringement on Mr. Cummings' right. She's talking about what we are talking about. The militants at the Supreme Court trying to show disrespect to Mr. Cummings, whether you agree or disagree with him. The man has his right, okay, to the freedom of the press. When he's talking, I mean, when we were all growing up, they said when another person talking, even in debates, you have to remain quiet and listen to the person. That's what civilized people do. But the gentleman came from court and he's been questioned, he's been asked, he's given information that is pertinent to what we are talking about, our democracy. Instead, some other person who doesn't like this guy sends their militants to overshadow and outshout him. This is not how we work in democracy. We have to have respect for each other. We may disagree, but we still have to respect each other. This one comes from Vivian Ward. Mr. Eastman, forget that thing. Gruesome crime will continue to happen in that country because no clean hands there to stop it. So leave that thing alone. Mr. Eastman, this is Vivian Ward. She basically saying what you were saying, for us to try the criminals, somebody has to have a clean hand, clean conscience, clean character, a reputable person to try that person. How can you have a person who has been responsible for murdering, for opening your mom's stomach to come back and say, now I am the judge and I'm going to sit over there to find out who are these and who this is what she is saying. It's almost impossible because all those that we are depending on, with the exception of you and myself and few folks, they have all been part of this murder spree and have benefited from it. That's Vivian Ward. That's her thing.
You know, that how it looks. It looks to us that we don't see enough going on the part of our authorities to bring people to justice. We see people getting away with things that should not be getting away with. We hear all kinds of scandals, and nothing we see coming out of it. It is very discouraging, and I don't blame Vivian for saying that. But equally so, we the people, if we believe that the people have the power, then we have to believe in ourselves that we can make a difference by what we do and say. Okay, so for instance, this Walkheim's court, these 300,000 names, even if they don't bring them to justice in Liberia, maybe we can get maybe sanctions will be issued against some of them because we don't have the willpower to do it ourselves. We're looking at if we go into elections and who we elect, let's start examining the people who they really are. Okay, and before we make a vote, before we put somebody there, let's find out if they really for us or they just want to be elected. I still think the power is with us. We have the power, but we have to use it wisely. It's still up to us to use our brains wisely. We can tell our leaders that we want certain things to happen. And how we do that is by our vote. We can tell them we want to see you do this. And they will listen to us or they lose our vote. So don't be discouraged. Things are going on. But if we give up, it would only get worse. So we never give up. We still tell the truth that if we see militants in the street and they're not helping us build our villages and towns, they're not helping us. They are not for us. That's how we know. That's what we do.
Mr. Elisha Banks says another one, Lofa Defense Force and Boycott in the midst of it all. Joseph Boycott, I'm talking about our leaders, these people who are now coming. This is a man who was vice president for 12 years, have been in the system since 1973, is with the Lofa Defense Force. Now coming back and saying that the militancy in Lofa County is wrong. CDC is too robust with its militancy. I mean, what can you say about this duplicity?
That's what happens. You know, you see something is brewing. This is how things start to brew. This is how. So we're speaking to them. We're telling them, look, if your defense force should be helping the community, okay, and we talk, and from both sides. We don't want to see anyone there to force somebody to believe to vote for their person or to believe what they say. That's not what we need militants for. We need an aggressive group who will help us in our community. If we're not ready for democracy, if we have to use force, that's the bottom line. So we got to talk to both sides before it gets to a point that we can't talk to any side. You know, let's convert our militants to people who are productive. That's the message we have to carry.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of you following. The questions are coming. We want to recognize some of the names. Teddy Ted Lion Yankun. He said, Mr. Coleman continues to lie. This is why the people got exhausted of him at the court and chanted a song of thief. Now here you are. Long time ago, it was the Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, that said, everybody likes their own crooks. Someone asked him, Tip O'Neill, the approval rating of the U.S. Congress is 8%, but your approval rating in Massachusetts is 98%. How do you jive that? Then he says, everybody likes their own crooks. Collectively, we got 8% approval rating. But in my hometown, in my district, I got 98%. You go to South Carolina, the guys that got 98%. You go, everybody likes their own crooks. If you want to call us all crooks. So, Teddy, this is where we are. You like Joseph Boyka, or you like George Weah, or you like Uri. So you say what it did to Uri, what it did to Cummings is fine because he's a thief. So they can, even if he's a thief, he has no right to his free speech. They should shut him down, and that's not how it works. Let me go to Amos George. Amos George says impunity should not be the order of the day in Liberia, and people must be held accountable for their action. Amos George, this is, Mr. Eastman, Amos George is talking about what you were talking about, the accountability piece.
Yes. So how do we do it? And this has been the problem. We have to stick by certain principles. We see people doing corruption, and then if they're close to us, then we don't want to talk about that. If they're our relatives, then we don't want to talk about it. If they're our friends, then we don't want to talk about it. We have to have principles that anybody does it, whether it's your mom or your father, but as long as they are going to break our rules, break our principles, then we cannot be behind them. And that's been the problem. We don't want to be we don't want to live by our principles. So we allow these things to happen, and it happened again and again and again. We don't have principles that we live by. We talk about it, but as soon as you go there, as soon as you find out it's your friend or your friend mom or your friend pa that are involved, you don't want to talk about it. It has to apply across the board, you know. Or what is going to happen when people know that you will not enforce your principles? When people know, they will take advantage of that. They will steal in broad daylight, and they know nothing will happen to it because you're not somebody to stick by your principles.
We talk about Mr. Eastman. We talk about the War and Economic Crime Court and how that list was compiled. Sam Waller is saying here it is true that VP Boyka was part of the rebel group Lofa Defense Force, but they were never mentioned anywhere in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report. So here we are. We are compiling names of those that need to be prosecuted, and then we are deleting those that are closer to us, just like you said, our friends, our relatives, and those with whom we are connected. Joseph Boyka, the photo just came on my phone with him standing with the Lofa Defense Force in the middle. So here is. I don't think you have ever seen his name mentioned with the Lofa Defense Force in the TRC Commission report.
No, and I've heard it in some corridors, but it has never really been he's never been a chief figure in the warring factions and the different divisions. But it is apparent they all had their biases and their sides. They had many of them did. But if again, what it boils down to living by principles. And if anybody who is really in a Liberia favor will be productive, he will not be militant or forcing somebody else to take his his candidate. And that is what we need to call out. That these things that we're seeing here, it's not necessary. Okay? We need to call it out now before anything more comes out of it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We are talking about issues that affect. I know Sam Wallow is saying I may have misquoted him. Make it clear, and we're definitely going to pronounce that. But I want to recognize Sam Wallow, Janga Son Manu. I know Manchester United. You guys are not doing too well. It's all right. Want to recognize Gongoliki Alpha. George Alpha, Sam Wallow. I saw a lot of our ladies here who are pro. Teddy, we call you already George, Emma George, Talawayan, Johnny Johnson, Aloysius Bank, Vivian Ward, Mieta Stella Heron, Yumatro Kringa, one of my kin folks, Edison Pajibo, Emmanuel Joyner, Alexander Boniface, Emmanuel Hayes, Elder James C. Blakey Jr., thank you for tuning in. Edison Pajibo again, Alfred Denise or Denise. I have militant in Liberia, and your militant don't even have a helicopter or no jet. Mr. Eastman, here we go. These guys are talking about their militants have helicopters, they got jets, they all over the place carry on mission. Our militants is only there singing Munya or whatever it is, Jacha. Everybody say the same thing. Everybody says the same battle cry. There's nothing unique about these battle cries or these militants. You go to the CDC, the same battle cries. You go across the street to the ANC, the same battle cry. So here we are. This guy or this person is saying, your militants, your military group does absolutely nothing. Like you said, after World War II, the United States were able to come up with some public engagement projects where they put people to work. Like you said, either cleaning up, rebuilding, breaking down stuff, just getting people busy. Now, for those of us who have some ideas about the history and public policy, we've been saying this to folks from the early time to where we are now, that there are ways that we can put these folks to work. They don't have to be all seditious. They all don't have to be unity partisans. You got 20, 30, 40,000 young men and women that are idle in the city, maybe 100,000. What happens to us getting grant from the international community, whoever will listen to us? And like you said, put together a cleanup brigade. Our job is just to clean up. That's your job, full-time job. We break you down into grades where we have command centers and we just do public work. You get paid. You may not get the pay that engineers get, but if it's $200 a month, you're going to get it. If the contract is for a year, at least for a year, you're going to get your guaranteed $200 a month over a year period. We can do this in segments all over the country. That's how you put people back to work, and people don't become idle. Because when they become idle, this is what they do. They create mayhem. So yes, those are things that we need to look at to make our folks engageable. Our folks, the young folks. Remember when Ellen came to power 2006? That's why about 12, 15, 16 years ago. Those kids that were 15, they are now 30. They are now parents. And if you were unemployed from the battlefield when you were a child soldier in 2006, and you have not had any employment for the past 16 years, you are now 30. And most likely you have a child or children to feed. Something have to give. So when you want to get to the bottom of criminality, this is what we are talking about. The government, the public, the private sector, we need to galvanize 100,000 strong brigade and say, even if it just means to clean our waterways. I've seen one of our friends, Fred Bass, and a group, they're doing something on a small scale, cleaning the waterways, collecting the plastics and recycling them. Just imagine he has maybe a group of 10 or 20 or 30 guys doing that. Just imagine if we did that in the thousands, tens of thousands. The city would be clean, the water would be clean, our environment would be clean. Our only problem going to be, do we have a disposable site where we can actually deposit without endangering the environment? That is a major issue. I am not on the ground. I don't know the last time you were there, whether we have a real disposable waste management system, disposable site, dump site, where these things can be done, sorted out, repackaged, reprocessed. I don't know if we have that. You're an engineer. When you were on the ground, what did you see?
Well, I will tell you this much. We have a many problems to deal with. Many things. Sanitation, power. I mean, you can name them. But what they require is three things. One, you need a plan, a good plan that's going to work. Two, you need people who can carry out that plan. Okay. And lastly, you will need many times you need the resources to enforce the plan. All our issues, I noticed a lot when I observed it. I didn't see people with know-how amongst those making decisions. It's very important that we have a professional in sanitation, a professional in electricity and power generation, a professional in airport management. We need professionals. Why? Because these people have studied and gone to work and studied these things. They have worked in the field, so they know what works. So what is missing, for some reason, they have a saying, say we can't eat that book we eat. Well, you don't want somebody who just knows book. You don't want just somebody who claims they're educated. You want somebody who knows what to do. That's why I said professional. Somebody who knows what to do to clean up that city, to have different points where we can collect the dirt. Somebody who knows what to do to run that airport, to know how to get power where it needs to be at the time it needs to be. We need people who actually are professionals so they know what to do. And if we can get them working along the side, the ministers and the appointees, we'll be much better off than leaving these decisions with people who not really trained in this area. I think that is one of the main things that given us a problem. We don't have the professional know-how behind our authorities and institutions.
Well, let me recognize a few more names here. I see the Lamin family, Save the State Liberia, Bill Liberia Pro Poly. These are the folks that keep us here. Aloysius Ben, Vivian Ward, we call you for Howard Menska, one of our vocal critics, very passionate about the Liberian situation. We appreciate her. Emmanuel Saka. One of the things that Save the State says was, Mr. Dualu, we agree, we listening, we watching you, we following what you are saying. Jonathan Swa, is that side, Jonathan side? But this is what somebody is saying. Mr. Gayman, if you have all these ideas and all these experience and everything else, why aren't you advising your pro-poor government? Well, my friend, let's do Emmanuel Journal here. Moral leadership is where we are lacking. Where the morality piece, my friend, everybody agrees with you. From our churches to our mosques, you talked to William R. Tolbert when he was president, and his affinity with young people, we used to call him the pedophile, morally bankrupt. Recently, you saw a group of men walking around in Liberia, maybe 2 years ago. If Liberia doesn't have a Muslim holiday, there will be blood in the street. These are religious people. So yes, when you talk about morally, we are bankrupt. I agree with you. Anything possible. We need war brigades and community labor rather than militant. Let those who graduate from the University of Liberia be engaged in adult leadership program and tree planting and agriculture. I agree with you 100%. The person that talked about me, this is Yumatro Krenga, one of my cousins. We don't need militant groups in our country. If you're trying to breed terrorists, she asked you, we're trying to breed terrorists. Please go find some other place, not Liberia. So if you are there and you want to use the opportunity to bring habit back to our country, she said, go somewhere else. Miata Stella Herring, we agree. Leadership breeds ignorance, and that was clear in that chant and infringement on Mr. Cummings' right, and that's correct. We addressed that earlier. Vivian Ward, the same thing, Mr. Eastman, forget that thing. Gruesome crimes will continue to happen in our country because no clean hands here to stop it. So leave that thing. The real Liberian way. Johnny Johnson, rebuild Lofa Bridge, send the USA black churches, West Indies churches, European countries, Quaker Universalist, Catholic, Anglican, Jehovah Witnesses, minority, if the Pan-Africanism don't come. Okay, this is a Pan-Africanism that to do it.
You know, Mr. Gayman.
Yeah.
I like to throw this out. You know what we've seen in Sierra Leone and Ghana? Sierra Leone is opening their doors to African Americans and people in the diaspora to come and help them build. They're bringing in money, they're bringing in ideas, and they're helping the country. Ghana is in fact now Ghana has a whole program open to these people where they're bringing in they're becoming more. People are looking for places to invest, and Liberia is a perfect place for this. We could use their know-how, their expertise. Do you think it's a good idea for us to invite, like what Ghana and Sierra Leone is doing, invite the people in the diaspora to come and invest in Liberia? Do you support that idea? Because they're looking for a place to call their home, and Liberia was created for such a thing.
Well, one of the things that we have had problem with is our constitution. The constitution, these other countries have made amendment to the constitution that you are black, you come into the country, citizenship is available to you, you can invest and do all that. We have to get to that point where we say our citizenship is open to all. Bring your wealth, bring your development, bring your investment, and let's invest together. But as it is now, we have several things that are impediment in Liberia. We got to set up our land dispute issue first. We have to settle our land dispute issue. Then we have to develop a citizen identification system. How do we know who is who? Since we like to compare ourselves to the United States, are we going to convert to the Social Security system, Social Security number system? One number per person, no matter where, how long you live until you die. Are we able to do that? Liberia also need to do what we call property identification system. We have to have people who know what the land is and where that land is located. If you call the ambulance, if I told you that I'm at 25 Buchanan Highway, you should come directly to my house and see me, not come to Buchanan Highway to the red light, go left, ask anybody, they will tell you where I live. We don't know. So the new Liberia, I'm not hearing it from the opposition. I'm not hearing it so far from this government, my government. I'm not hearing it from Cummings. I would have expected that this would have been a policy, part of his plan. The only person that's been talking something similar, something resembling this, is Kofa. Mr. Ben Fanel is the only one that has been talking about the property and citizen identification system. Nobody else from the major parties have ever addressed that. Now, to the person who said, why am I advising the pro-poor government? My advice to the pro-poor government was take a page of the Dwight Eisenhower's playbook, 1957, 58, 59, when he came into power, whatever year that was. He made a pronouncement that after the war, that the United States would be the greatest economic power in the world, and they're asking how you're going to do that. He said, I am going to connect the whole United States. So produce can leave California, go to New York on wheels. So we introduced the interstate highway system. President Weah is trying to do that by connecting every county, every capital in the county. Road connectivity is the number one indicator of economic growth. And I support the president on the road development if he connects all 15 capitals. And the world agrees. The last time you saw the gentleman from the EU say we support the George Weah, President Weah, road connectivity. Everybody knows that because no matter how you invest in agriculture, if you cannot get your produce from point A to point B, it's useless. So yes, road connectivity should be very high on our list, and the world should surround President Weah to make sure that we have our road connectivity. Mr. Eastman, we're running against time here. The next show is coming up. Let's go into closing here.
I just wanted to read a couple of comments before we go. Dave Jah said, if the head is wet, the body is wet.
Okay.
Liberia's greatest mistake is to give national power to an absolutely incompetent president. George Weah cannot innovate. He is unable to lead. This is why Liberia is in total decline.
Okay, let's leave it right there. Let me address Mr. Dave Jah. Dave Jah here is one of the campaign managers for Team Gonglo. The last time I engaged Mr. Jah, I said, where is the Gonglo plan for education, for healthcare, for roads, for women's rights? All of those things, all these years that Gonglo have been in government and been in advocacy, Mr. Jah told me they are working on it. So you talk about incompetence, Mr. Jah, you and the entire Gonglo team that have been advocating for almost 15 years, and you have not come up with a plan by now to address education, healthcare, civil rights, women's rights, then something is inherently wrong with you more than it is with George Weah. Mr. Eastman, address him.
Yeah, so what I believe is he needs a strong team. I believe he has the people power inherent. He has a lot of supporters. If that guy wants, he can tell to people tomorrow, let's do this, and thousands of people will go out and do it.
Which guy?
The president.
Oh, the president. Okay.
He can mobilize people tomorrow to do great things, but his team has to be a team that knows how to get things done. They have to be knowledgeable. It is one thing to have great support, but it's another thing to have a very crack team of professionals that know how to get things done. And if you don't have that knowledge, you can't do it. You can be 100% loving the president, but if you don't have the knowledge to do certain things, you just don't have it. So it is all he has to do is make sure he has professionals behind his mean lieutenants. They will get the job done. But I believe that in him, because I know he has that power to move people, and that's what we need. We need somebody to mobilize Liberian people toward a better Liberia. We need mobilization. We need somebody to encourage and inspire Liberians to do things for their own self, not because they're being paid, but for their own country.
Thank you. So, you got 2 minutes closing because we run out of time.
So those are the things. So we talked about the militancy today and how we need to convert militancy into something positive. Okay. We also talked about these signatures and this truth and reconciliation that we're pushing. I think it is fair that anybody wants to see justice come to those who have hurt and taken other people's lives. But the practicality of it, we lacked the spine to do it a long time ago. And the longer we're waiting, the harder it is to get it. So it is still possible to bring, but it wouldn't be on a whole scale like before. So we this effort, though it is good, but I think it's a little bit late in the game, and we still need the support of people on the ground to enforce it. So we still need that support. So we'll see how far that goes. But the challenges we face, we can accomplish them if we just change. We believe in certain principles. We bind ourselves by principles and start living by that. No matter what, we will see things change automatically. But as long as we're going to compromise, that's when it's somebody close to you, it's somebody relative. We're going to be doing this a long time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Eastman. I think when you talk about that, we are talking about true patriotism. This morning, I was online with a guy, a very brilliant young man from Liberia. He told me, he said, Mr. Gayman, I'm very suspicious of you. You voted against Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, then you turned around and you were praising her, you were working with her, and now George Weah is there, you're doing the same thing, you're working, you're praising. And I told him, I said, that tells you that I am a patriot. When Ellen did some good things, we have to recognize that. When President Weah is doing some great things, we have to recognize that.
Exactly.
I would not sit back and waste 12 years of my life because I didn't like Ellen, like some of them have done. Then your man didn't win the election. You're going to wait another 12 years if George Weah get re-elected. That's 24 years of your life that have been wasted. You still have to get involved in doing good for your country, that's what a patriot is. So what I'm saying here is, to the opposition, we've been talking about things that will straighten up a country. One of the things that we talked about that no one wants to talk about is the unitary system that we have in Liberia, that the president is king. Nobody have ever, not the Cummings, not the Urey, not the late Bromsky, nobody has ever wanted to touch the unitary system in Liberia because everybody want that absolute power. They don't want to divest. So what I'm saying here, if you're going to be successful, we have to come up with some form of either quasi-federal system where the different counties serve as states, where we do revenue sharing, where maybe 60% of the revenue from that state remains in the local government to be used for the intended purposes. But until that, we are spinning our wheels, and I think the president has done much with less, and I think he's going to get better as we go on. What I'm seeing when I get a report from Professor Zawilo, who just joined the team recently, I feel very, very confident that eventually we are getting there little by little. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your comments. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week at the same time. Focus on Liberia. As we always say, whether you are pro or anti-government, we are all Liberians. Thank you, and see you next week at the same time.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people. Liberia.